What is up, guys? How you doing? Just kidding, I don't care. Today we're going to talk about my top 10 favorite horror movies. Before we start, let me just say I'm not really that much of a horror movie addict. I'm not that big of a fan of horror movies. There are some that I enjoy, and I don't want to be one of those douchebag film majors that say, "Oh, I don't watch horror movies because they depend too much on jump scares." But I do believe it. I'm kind of one of those people, I guess. Not every horror movie is like this. It's just I've seen a ton of horror movies that depend on jump scares, and I'm tired of this. So, yeah, I don't like them that much. But there are a couple, so we're going to talk about them today. The rules are they have to be more horror than anything else. Like, for example, I wanted to put Zombieland on this list, but then I realized it's more of a comedy than a horror. And I also wanted to put Evil Dead, but I heard Evil Dead 2 is even better, and I haven't watched it yet. I plan on watching it, so I'm not adding that one to the list. So, let's start with this. Let's go. Number 10 is the original Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I'm not really a big fan of 80s slasher horror classics. I mean, I like some of them, but the reason I don't like that many of them are all kind of the same reason, but I'll talk about it at another point of this video. Long story short, they don't really stick with me, except this one. This one really did. Uh, it's because out of all of these, I think this is the most unique one. It has a really, very creative idea. Freddy Krueger is an iconic character in the history of 80s slasher horror movies, and there's a good reason. Out of all the movie monsters and all that, this is the one that honestly you feel like you can't escape because he can show up in your dreams, so it's like you can't even rest. You are always followed, you're always in danger, you're always at risk at dying. And, of course, the design is very creative, so I do recommend these movies for anyone. The Fly, 1986. I haven't seen all of the Fly movies. I've seen this one and the sequel to this one, and while I like the second one fine, I do prefer this one. Jeff Goldblum pretty much makes this movie. He has that Jeff Goldblum charm in the beginning that we've grown to love, like in Jurassic Park and other movies of his. Honestly, what's very interesting about this movie is his evolution. He goes from the happy, excited scientist, but not the evil type of excited scientist, more like the type of excited scientist that says, I'm making the world better by doing this. And when the accident happens, he stops being excited and goes from being overexcited because of how powerful he feels to finding out what really is happening and being terrified of it to actually looking at it as a good thing, even though it's a terrible thing, and getting more excited to the point where he kind of turns into a psycho around the ending of the movie. Let me just say the ending of the movie is perfect. I'm not going to spoil it, just enjoy. Number 8, I Am Legend with the alternate ending. The original ending is okay. It's kind of just Robert finding out the cure and he sacrifices himself, and that's what makes him the legend. But the alternate ending completely changes the whole point of the movie. It turns out that the infected woman that Robert has kept in the lab is the mate of the leader of the infected group. And what I like about this is that they don't attack him when he gives her back. It just shows that there's humanity in this new species. And speaking of species, the reason that Robert is the legend is because to them, he is the monster. He's the weirdo that hunts them down. He's the infected. Watching this, we realize that this is a whole new species and it's their turn on the planet. Robert's species is just gone. It's not his turn anymore. His turn is just over. And honestly, it completely changed the whole point of the movie and it makes you look at other zombie movies differently. Number 7, A Quiet Place. This is probably one of the most unique movie experiences I've ever had, right up there with Avengers Endgame and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. It's very creative, even though it's very simple. It's a very unique but simple premise. And it's also a perfect mix of relaxing and suspenseful. I can't really think of that many movies that are able to do this. Just the idea of not even able to make a sound or you'll die is kind of terrifying when you think about it because we're humans. We kind of just make noise one way or another every day. So the idea of just not being able to do it or you'll die, it really gets to you. Also, one little thing is that the child actress actually is deaf in real life, so everything in this movie is authentic when it comes to sign language stuff, and that's a cool factor. Plus, This is probably an easy movie to make jump scares out of. It's literally just quiet, but they don't make jump scares. That would be the easy route, and they don't take it, and I appreciate that. Number six, Train to Busan. This movie is very unique, but you can already tell what kind of movie it is and what the plot of the movie is just from the title. There's a virus in Korea, and these people are on a train, and the virus gets there, and they have to survive. But really, the reason this movie is on this list is because it's one of the few movies ever that have been able to make me cry. There are very few movies out there that I've been able to do that, and I did not expect to cry at all since this is a freaking zombie movie. But the reason it made me cry is because there's just heart. It's one of the few zombie movies that have heart in it. Because usually zombie movies just try to scare you and that's about it. But no, this is a mix of suspense and terror and horror and heart. And honestly, the main reason this is on the list is because of the sacrifice scene. That's when I started to tear up. Because usually in movies, when a parent or an adult sacrifices themselves, they kind of just tell the kid, go, go. But no, he actually cries. He tears up. It feels realistic, and I love that. Number five, Misery. This is probably Kathy Bates' best movie and my personal favorite from her. Stephen King, who's the writer of this story, he has this talent of being able to make something as simple as being stuck in a bed terrifying. He's done it before, he's done it in the future, and I think this is the best Kathy Bates movie again. Like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, she just makes the movie. She's great at just going from a kind and loving person to a terrifying maniac. And in some parts, she even makes the scenes where she's kind scarier than the scenes where she's angry because you feel like she's holding her anger in. So you're scared that she'll burst at any moment and just keep torturing this author. This is probably a big celebrity's biggest fear, just being trapped by a huge fan and being forced to do stuff against his or her will. It's very entertaining. From one Stephen King story about a dude stuck in the bed to another Stephen King story about a woman stuck in the bed, here's number four, Gerald's Game. In my opinion, one of the best, if not the best movie on Netflix. Like Kathy Bates and Jeff Goldblum, Carla Gugino just, I hope I'm saying it right, just makes the movie. And again, it's a very unique premise, even though it's been used before when it comes to the bed thing. This couple goes to their summer home and are about to have sex, and the husband puts her in handcuffs, but he has a heart attack, so she's just stuck there, and she has to survive mentally and physically. So she kind of goes insane, but also tries to keep her mind busy so that she doesn't get bored out of her mind and die. I don't want to say the ending or talk about it because it's one of those movies that is best to watch not knowing anything about it. So let me just say, definitely worth the watch. For number three, I'm putting both Get Out and Us. The reason I'm doing this is because they're both very similar, but they're both very unique too. Uh, I don't know if anyone else feels like this, but I just feel like they're both in the same universe. They're very similar, but they're very unique. They're two sides of the same coin. They have very similar ideas, but it's shown and displayed and just very completely different in how it is. And I love them both. I'm glad that Us got nominated for Best Picture and won Best Actor. I feel like Us should have been nominated for something too, because Lupita Nyong'o, she did awesome in Us, so I feel like at least she should have been nominated for Best Actress. But anyways, like I said, these are both movies that are just more shock appeal. It's best not to know much about it going in, so I'm not gonna go into it. But 100% worth the watch. They're both in my top 100 favorite movies list. Number two, The Shining. Okay, let's get into it. The reason I don't like that many 80s slasher horror movies like Jaws or Halloween or Friday the 13th Part 1 is because they all kind of just have the same issue for me. They're all very slow. Like they have this formula that's very boring to me. The people act normal, then some murder happens. They talk about it for like a minute, then they go back to being normal and boring, and then another murder happens, and then they ignore it. They go back to being normal and boring, and then the last 10, 15 minutes ends up being entertaining. And I hate this formula. Like, I know these are classics and I know they're building up, but to me, they just don't build up that well. The Shining is one of the few movies from this time that actually build up very well because instead of just doing that stupid formula of just something crazy happens, then people like normal. No, it goes from normal to crazier and crazier, and Jack Nicholson does this perfectly. It's one of the best performances I've ever seen from this time, and I love it. Number one, Silence of the Lambs. Every movie in this list, except the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, they've been in my top 100 favorite movies of all time list, and this has been the closest to one. It hasn't been close to one, but it is the closest. Hannibal Lecter and Clarice Sterling have turned into some of my favorite movie characters ever, too. For very different reasons. Hannibal Lecter is just very entertaining, even though he's been in there for 15 minutes. You don't forget those 15 minutes. He's very terrifying, but he's also very charming. Like, you want to listen to him talk, but you're also scared to be in a room with him. And Clarice Sterling is also a perfect example of growth development. She goes from being kind of nervous and underappreciated to being the freaking badass that takes over. Uh, Overall, this is just an awesome movie. So I hope you enjoyed my list. I might talk about any of these movies into deeper perception. I would love to. Maybe I'll do it at one point. So thank you for watching.